Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
You know, there are many inconvenient times when you just start recording without like warning me. Like we don't do a count, and I don't think this is news to anyone that's listened to the show in the past. But man, today was a compromising one. My finger was just firmly placed up my nose as we started this.
I mean, it's an audio medium. You didn't need to tell people you were
Well,
picking your
that's the thing, right?
nose.
It's like is I don't know what kind of sounds my body makes, you know? Like I've never been confident of any of that shit ever since I was a kid. Like, I don't know, you see that shit about like you farted and you don't even realize it type stuff, you know?
That's a good point. And before we address that point and others more, I've prepared a brief statement in order to explain to the listener what this episode is about. Sejan has no idea what this is, and it should give him time to finish up his nasal grooming while I read it to you. Without further ado, to be continued is definitely the worst phrase in the lexicon of broadcast television, and yet last week we at the Say Report essentially left you all TBC'd when we promised to follow up on everything we discussed next week. From personal experience, the worst case of to be continued I've ever encountered was on January 29th, 2007, when Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip's 13th episode ended with those three fateful words. They'd just come back from winter hiatus the week before. I was excited to get back to the story, only to be treated with only half of a story. Little did I know that there would only be 3 more episodes before getting TBC'd by the gods of television scheduling, when the show was taken off the air in February to be burned off during the summer months beginning in May. What's worse, the 19th episode of the series kicked off a 3-parter that left me TBC'd twice. In fact, I think Studio 60 may be the show with the most TBCs in my own personal memory. All of this is meant as a fun, delightful way to say that we've decided to follow suit and are turning our 2-part before-after into a trilogy. Now, without further ado, enjoy During.
I am curious why you think anyone out there would even have the knowledge that we didn't plan this to originally be a 3-parter.
When I released the first episode before to like share with people, I called it the first 2-parter in the history of the Say Report.
Oh, so marketing.
Yeah, marketing fucked us on this one. That's 100% what happened, and it seemed appropriate for the Say Report. But it was always going to be before and after, and then I realized, we record before I'm finished with my esports gaming survey stuff. So yeah. I can't really report on what it was like until I get the final data of everything.
Sure.
I can tell you what it's been like so far. I feel a little bit trapped. I think I may have made a mistake doing and engaging in something like this the same week that we went back to full in-person at my job. Because, work, even though I was always going into the office, it didn't feel like work because it was essentially me living an I Am Legend dream. I was the only person in giant buildings on a huge campus.
How often did you turn the lights on, and how many lights did you turn on, right? Like, you never, if you're the only guy in the office, first of all, you never turn all the lights on, right? And if it's me, depending on time of day and all of that, if I can get away with it, I'm not turning the lights on at all.
So the light in my office I never turn on because the fluorescents are just poorly located in the office that I've been assigned. They're right above the computer, and they're supposed to cascade out and fill the whole room. But really all they do is just cast terrible shadows right down on my computer screen. Mm-hmm. And it's also fluorescent lighting, so it's depressing. I bought a lamp during the whole pandemic thing so that I could have my own type of light and be in control of it, which was nice. But the more important thing about turning the lights on is all of our lights are automated. They're motion activated. Yeah. So when I would come into the office, I'd unlock the main door and all the lights would come on, and then I'd go into my office where I would sit and start to work. And then the timer would go off in 35 to 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then I would just be bathed in darkness because I would just be sitting at my computer answering emails, doing the work that I'm assigned that day. But now there's people all around. But like there's no real reason to come into my office area, so the lights still go off, and then that throws people for a loop because we have an open sign on
Yeah.
the office suite so that people will know when the office is open, but all they see is no lights. So I get people like
The
pressing up
universal
on
sign. It is the, to be fair, it is the universal sign of don't come in here, right?
yeah,
It's part of the reason that I was saying that if I can get away with it, I won't turn the lights on, right? I like the false sense of security that the darkness provides.
but I don't know, it's just so strange. Like I thought that like coming back and being people like beforehand, that was never a problem. Like there was just so much going on. But just this week there has been like still no activity in our office area.
Yeah.
So the lights still go out, and then am I supposed to get up and work? Usually I'm in the middle of stuff when the lights go off. Like I'm writing up emails or letters or preparing things. Like it would suck to have to stop what I'm doing so that I can go like take a lap
Yeah,
to turn
right.
the lights on. It's I don't know. I don't know if it's one of those things where like building decided, oh, let's set the timer on the lights shorter because there'll be less people here. So,
Yeah,
like,
it's energy saving techniques
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and I applaud that. I mean, like that's the thing, right? Is like there's easy ways around this. Dual operating systems for lights is a thing that has existed. There is a way to have motion activated lights that can also just be turned on permanently. Like that's not a weird fix. But in the world in which we now live, where we know that like waste, of power or electricity is a huge no-no, and we should be more wary of that sort of shit. Like we should just get used to the fact that if the lights aren't on, it could just be that things are just like in logo mode right now. It's not no go, right? Like
Right.
we can go inside this building just because the lights are not on. The sign says open, but that means that we have to improve as humans and remember to put up closed signs, because that's the biggest thing, right? Is like how many times have you seen a store that was clearly not open but the open sign was left on? So like the lights are off, that tells you big like they're probably not actually, right?
Right. I mean, I guess it's weird because you can see my lamp on if you look in. So, like, there's a light on the end. It's like a ghost lamp, though, the way that
It's like
it's set up.
a
So,
nice, but it's like a privacy thing, right? At that point, is like, oh, they've turned the lights off. Clearly, they don't want anyone to come to them right now,
it
right?
just
Like,
feels very
there's
strange. Yeah.
there's so many levels to it.
Yeah. But, like, so on top of that is the fact that if I have a hard day now that I'm dealing with the public again, and not that I've had, like, any real issues with it, but it's a different mindset from what I've been doing for the last almost 3 years at my job, seeing nobody. Like maybe I want to take a little ride or like take my time getting home or just like enjoy being out in the world. Those
Right.
things, but the
But
fact that I needed to get back in order to take my tests to see my mental acuity and my tracking abilities every day at 6 p.m., like I kind of lost the ability to do that.
yeah, that's a bummer, man.
Yeah.
That's a real bummer. It's weird because when you do these kinds of experiments from the researcher side, you always want to make sure that you're first of all you're tracking real life, right? Like you don't want to force the subject that you're studying into some type of pattern that's not natural to them, because that doesn't give you any good information if they're
Right.
not doing what they just normally do. But then on top of that, like you do need them to kind of be aware that they're doing this thing so that they can be keeping track of things for you, making sure they're turning devices on and off, all this nonsense, right? Like so you can't completely you are going to affect them. You cannot completely remove yourself from studying them without some real problematic like ways of going about it. Like if we want to make sure that the subject is well informed about what is happening to them for their own safety, that does mean that we have to accept a level of which you are kind of affecting the outcome of your results. And this is kind of what you should be. You should make sure you're tracking this stuff and letting anybody that you can in any way that you can know this kind of stuff, because like what you're saying is you don't get to go about your natural life, so they're getting kind of skewed numbers in that way.
Well, it's really it is my natural life. Like I made sure to set the time where that test was where things were working when I didn't have to deal with traffic coming home from work.
Right.
Like I would leave I get out of work at 4 o'clock, and then I could usually be home by 4:30, which means that, I take a shower since I was out in the world. I'm sitting down to like watch TV or do something with the family at 5. But now that traffic is there, one of these days it took me an hour and a half to get home.
Oof.
And that's because, it was raining and people are not used to driving in the rain. People were already bad at driving in the rain around Rhode Island, let alone the fact that they probably haven't been doing it because there was no real reason to go out in the rain before.
Yeah, right.
And I passed like 2-3 accidents, like round trip the whole day, and then that's delaying things as well. So it's just like getting home at friggin' 5:30 and then being like, oh, I gotta shower and then I gotta go be down at my computer to take this. That's not how it was prior to this week. Like,
Right.
I accidentally stumbled into this perfect storm that honestly is a better representation of what my life was like when I was competing in these things the way that I was competing in them.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm giving them better data in the fact that I'm not like, oh, okay, I'm home at 5 and I'll watch a show that's 40 minutes long and then I'll have 20 minutes to prepare to take this test. No, it's more like the Link to the Past day where I got pulled over by a cop at 5:30 and my match was at 5:45. And I'm just like, I really hate to do this, but I need to get home for an appointment. Can you take my information? He's like, well, it's just because you ran the stop sign. But the stop sign hasn't been there for a while. And I'm just like, I am very sorry that it was a rolling stop, sir. If you want to give me a ticket, I'll take it. But I have to be home for something.
Go. Please.
And he was very kind and it all worked out for me that day. But like, that's the thing. Like, I sat in my seat at like 5:42 having to be ready to do a online match with another living human in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And so like that's more realistic as to how it is. But like also setting it at 6 o'clock, usually I watch that show with the family and then I come downstairs and I game for an hour before going back upstairs. So like I set it all up to try to fit into what my normal schedule was. What I didn't expect was the schedule from before, like my actual normal schedule, not my pandemic shifted schedule.
Yeah, man. I mean, we've got to start getting used to non-pandemic times again, which is weird because it's not like the pandemic's over or like
Oh yeah, no, the stuff that I've been reading out of England is terrifying.
Yeah, but the world has apparently decided that we're just going to go back to trying to live our lives again. We were more prepared this time with vaccines and boosters and whatnot, but man, yeah.
But it really feels so strange. And I know that like I'm probably one of the last people to be experiencing this. Like Dale experienced that at the aquarium 2 Octobers ago. Right? Yeah. October 2020. Oh, the aquarium's back open and we're seeing people all day. Let's just hope they have masks on because we can't tell people to mask up. Like it's so me getting to wait until 2022 to experience that was wonderful, but it is so strange how it's just like snap of the finger, opening of the freaking shades, everything is back to normal again.
Yeah.
Like there's no slow ramp up into it. One day we're masking up and being conscious of this disease that's out there. The next day everybody's licking each other's foreheads. I don't know.
Oh man!
But it's been good.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm glad that you feel like you're getting back to your normal life with this thing.
And I think it's really interesting that like I felt like a little bit trapped, and I'm like, but it's not the subject that's making it trapped. It's the other part of my life. Like actually identifying that, I'm just like, no. The part I feel trapped by is my job. My job is the problem, and that was always kind of the problem. I just had like, and it's not that I don't like my job, right? It's just that like, to quote The Simpsons, work sucks. That's why you get paid to do it. Like. And it's not, I mean, I like what I do. I've been having fun actually helping people again, as opposed to the thing where I felt like I was just sitting in an office in case the phone rang, right?
Right.
Or if someone were to stumble in, like I can be a face that can help them through with their issues. But it's another thing to be like that. And it's just that reminder of that, like, oh yeah, my job wasn't 100% my favorite thing in the world prior to the pandemic. That reminder, that like reality shining through the windows has been really interesting. But I feel like I'm doing pretty good in the whole tracking thing. I've improved since my first one. I've noticed myself getting better, specifically at the tests. I don't know how to see if anything that I'm doing in there is actually helping me in the real world or helping me in my gaming. I know that I'm better at the games that they're giving me in NeuroTracker X.
I mean, is there a game that you were doing pretty frequently before that you can run and see if you're doing any better? And like that would be the thing, right?
Yeah. And I mean, well, I mean, we say that, right? Here's an actual conclusion to something. I did unlock Gold Mario in Mario Kart 8. I was not doing very well at like 20cc races before this whole thing started.
200 or
200cc.
You unlocked some 20cc.
Oh my god, it's so slow. No, the 200
becomes a waiting game, and that's really, really a whole different level meta.
Yeah, the 200cc stuff is, and I've gotten better.
So remind me again what you have to do for that. You have to just win a cup in every.
No, you need to get the gold cup. So you need to place first in everything, and there are ways to not get stars. Turns out if you finish 8th, but then the other ones are all first, and somehow it wasn't like the same person who was getting second all 4 matches.
Right.
You can still win that gold cup. That actually felt great when I did it. I think I had like 45 points and still walked away with the gold cup somehow.
Nice.
But that's it. So for the 12 original tracks that are unlocked in Super Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, if you get the gold trophy in all of them, that's how you unlock Gold Mario. Yeah, and it's like, that's a character I'm never going to play as. I will.
And then there's ways to get like gold car, gold wheels, right? Like there's all sorts
I don't know anything about that. I just wanted to make sure I had unlocked all the characters. Because that feels like when you beat Mario Kart is when you've unlocked all the characters.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of life in that game, like end of life stuff in that game that I am always surprised by. It's just wild because I have been playing a lot of it too. Just because we with the new tracks that have been coming out and we've just been kind of talking about my revisit on my OLED, right, to like old games. So yeah, I've had that one in rotation with a couple of different things, but the big one right now is Mario Maker. I don't know what, like, I think it was the Iron Bros stuff that you posted a couple of weeks ago. Suddenly got like my brain going again on Mario Maker, and now I can't stop thinking about it. Right now I'm thinking about a new track I want to build today.
Well, that's the same reason why Dale bought it yesterday morning. Because she's just like, oh, Mario Maker. Season's making levels. I have all these ideas and I want to put them in. So she's like just slowly testing out ideas. All the levels that she's been releasing are like probably going to grow and culminate into something.
Nice.
And I'm a little scared to see that end game of it all. But yeah, it's just one of those ones that Mario Maker is something that I put aside when they're like, we're not going to be releasing any new stuff for this. And it's like, well, I had fun with you. Also, Super Mario 35 came out, which was what I wanted in like online Mario Brothers.
Yeah, right. It working first of all.
It worked, which was a nice difference. But then also, it's getting to use knowledge that I already have in my mind in a way, as opposed to playing just random levels with random people. It's an interesting game, Mario Maker. I will say that. And I've enjoyed going back to it, playing your stuff, playing Dale's stuff. I don't think I'm going to make any of my own, because going back and playing the ones that I made, I'm just like, I am not a level designer. That's just not what I'm here for.
No, the game caters to 2 very unique audiences, and those that like to do the creative stuff and those that like to test the creative stuff, right? Like, and the ways in which they've made a lot of strides in both regards is pretty amazing. I could easily see them doing with Mario Maker exactly what they are now doing with Mario Kart, where like 2-3 years from now, once you hit, what was it, like the 10-year anniversary or whatever it was for Mario Kart when they just decided to start doing this stuff.
It sounds like it's the 10. I believe it was 2012. No, it had to have been a little after 2012 when that released. I think it was 2014. I know I had started working for the state.
Yeah, but whatever number they want to put on it, like give the game that much space, right? And then just come back and sell $35 more worth of content, right? Like at this point, with what I have currently been doing this week in Mario Maker, I'd seriously look at purchasing a little bit more to go with it. Some type of DLC pack or something like that for sure. Depending on what kind of stuff that was in it, I'd be super on board. And if the Mario Kart stuff is any indication, like Nintendo can do that when they want to do it right. Obviously, there's bad DLC in Nintendo games. There's bad DLC in all of the
gaming,
games, but but the rare case of good DLC is not unheard of under the Nintendo roof. So I'd be excited to see whatever it was that they do. But yeah, just like super into that right now. But Mario Kart, man, I don't know. I like when you're done with Mario Kart. I feel like you're done with Mario Kart for like a couple of days until somebody says, "I want to play Mario Kart with you," and then that you're just like super on board again. Not just you, but like
No, that's it. Yeah, Mario Kart is like kind of always there in the back.
Right.
It's like Shia LaBeouf of Switch games, honestly. But yeah, so I've enjoyed going back to Super Mario Maker 2, taking a stab at the Iron Brother stuff. I got 3 through, and then I got into a troll level, and it's just like, oh, this is why this sucks. This is why, is that like, sometimes you're going to get a level where they're like, no, don't put on the shell, Mitt. Throw the shell.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, too bad.
Yeah, you're screwed, and you have to die in order to restart. But the whole point of the Iron Bros is
to get through 50 normal levels without a death. So.
Yeah, there's too many. I'm gonna put this nicely. Overly creative levels for me to think that that's a viable. Like, there's so much of that is going to be based on the luck of what random levels you get that skill is no longer a factor for me.
Yeah. I don't disagree, but I am going to try like one a day and see what happens. It's an interesting way to breathe new life into Super Mario Maker on my side of things.
It's like a Mario Maker drinking game, but yeah, but this idea being that like this is a challenge that you can do, and I can see it becoming that, right? It's the idea that right now it's being kind of held up as like an event, right? And I don't need it to be an event, but like the idea that this is a thing that people do with Mario Maker, that I can get on board with. Like you're saying, every now and then you dip in, you try it. If you can pull it off, that's great. And it's a badge of honor you get to wear on your Discord forum. But like other than that, I'm not interested in like high stakes version of that,
Oh yeah, no, I don't ever want that to go to like hard or ultra hard. I like the accessibility of it is what I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like maybe I guess it would probably have to be like 150 in order to really be fair. I'd like to see an Iron Bros in the easy of it all.
Because the easy ones are wild.
Because the easy ones, like it's one of those things where like it's almost an endurance thing to like not die that way. Where in normal, a lot of the reasons why that you go from easy to normal in levels is because your level has like a slight troll, so you're getting like 1 or 2 extra deaths out of it.
Yeah, or the bigger thing for me is the big difference between easy and normal, and what makes a normal level versus an easy level is that there's an actual level. Like there's there's a concept, even if that concept is start to beginning. In the easy levels, what you get a lot of the time, and there are people out there that are legitimately just trying to put together easy levels and succeeding at that. But what you're more often to find when you go into easy is these levels that people are like testing, like themselves, the game, a concept. So it's not a full level so much as it is like, oh yeah, down here is Mario where he can just run to the goal, but 60 feet in the air, if you actually look, I actually did this whole thing with a thwomp like puzzle mechanic that I was just testing out. So like, yeah, just run to the end, and then that shows up, and then they post that. I don't know why people post this shit up as a level for other people to play, and then people can just run through a bunch of easy levels in one go because of that kind of stuff. And then like you're saying, it becomes a little bit of an endurance test, because then you come up against that one where you just cannot figure out what you're supposed to do, and it's because this person just like wasn't putting together a level, wasn't building any markers to let you know where to go or what to do. But if you just jump down, boom, the goal is just below screen. You just don't know that, and you don't want to die because you're doing this thing where you want to. Right? Yeah. So it's definitely an endurance test.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. I think I would like that part of it a little bit better. I think it'd be a little bit more attainable. But again, I mean, sometimes those easy levels, just because it's marked easy, like it lulls you into a false sense of security, which is the real thing that I've been learning about myself through this whole esports study that I'm taking part in. Is like, oh, I get cocky, and when I get cocky, that's when I make mistakes. And I've like always kind of felt that way.
I'm very proud that you've come to this realization about you and your life.
Well, seeing it, it's one thing when like, oh man, I think I got cocky there and that's why I screwed up. But it's just like, I don't want to think like that. But then when I actually see the data and that like I got my highest scoring round in the test that they give me, and I'm just like, man, I'm feeling good, right? Like, let's ride this energy. And then like my next one was lower than the last 4 that I had done. And I'm just like, yeah, that's what entitlement and sense of security can do to me. Is like I get all braggadocious, and it's interesting. It's been interesting to learn it about myself. And one other thing, right, where we can like kind of pay off on the after from last week, my Pro Controller doesn't have stick drift. I'm just a fucking idiot. And I'll wear that, and I'll be honest, I had somehow turned on motion control on Super Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Excellent.
So I'm like, why am I drifting to the left? And it turns out that like that's just kind of how I hold my controller. It's
just
like
a little bit of
tilted a little bit to the left.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear it, man. I mean, part of what we were talking about was that, like, I feel like the Joy-Con, as specifically Joy-Cons, just have the most loosey-goosey joysticks in the world. And I mean, more to that point, like the fact that Nintendo has also put out the Pro Controller, and that, by all accounts, has a much better lifespan as far as drift goes, at least. Like, I just can't believe that both of those products are coming out of the same house, you know?
Well, I think it's the size. I don't know if I've already said this or not. The Joy-Con, if you ever take one of those apart, there were all those Joy-Con customization videos in like the fall of 2017.
Videos, but yeah.
What they pack into such a tight space, it's not surprising that like things might be rubbing up against one another in there and causing the failures that we're seeing across the board.
For sure. The Pro Controller definitely gives them a little bit more real estate to play with as far as the internals go and things like that.
Though I have to be honest, I want to try out the Ghillie Kit Pro Controller that has the magnetic sticks. Like, I always find myself looking at it, but it's the same price as a Pro Controller for a third-party device. And the QA from everybody seems to be hit or miss. Like, sometimes the sticks feel fantastic, and then other times they feel like they're grinding because of how the magnet array is. So, like, that's a lot. Like, if I could get it for, like, $10 less than a Pro Controller, I'd be all in to try it out. But, like, when it's the same price as a Pro Controller, it's a little difficult to make me...
Are they only being offered directly through Ghillie Stick or like...
Ghillie Kit is on Amazon and, like, AliExpress. That's the other thing, too, is that, like, primarily they were an AliExpress product, and now they're on Amazon.
Well, if they're on Amazon, then I was going to say start keeping your eyes open, because Amazon's going to start doing their whole like pre-Black Friday sales, right? And this is exactly the kind of stuff that you see get 10%, 20% off in like flash sales and stuff.
Well, dude, I'm already seeing that with like there was that whole like drought of toys and collectibles, and now that like real good stuff is coming out, the stuff that kept us alive in between that wasn't necessarily the greatest, really was kind of playing to collectors and the things that they want, looking specifically at the Age of Apocalypse waves of Marvel Legends. Like they did 2 waves of Age of Apocalypse specific figures. And as much as I love Age of Apocalypse, like that's a niche fan base to be releasing in like 2020. I don't want to be like Cyclops looks stupid in Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah,
and that's why he's $5.
Yeah, it'd be a different story if the what do you call it, X-Men movies? Who's the one that did those last 3 there?
Bryan Singer did one of them. He's the one who did Days of Future Past. So,
but yeah, if that stuff had hit, right? If later Fox, that was what I was trying to think of. Yeah. If later Fox, if
X-Men, Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix,
that stuff definitely would have that line would have made more sense, I think.
Yeah, so it was exciting. I mean, because I think comic book wise, like it's an anniversary of when those dropped. So it made sense where they would do it. And also it's one of those situations where, you know, we want to get stuff out. And if we go a little bit more niche with it, we don't need to produce as much. And the people who want it will also be happy.
And pay more.
Yeah. And yes. And it's been a weird time, but now this stuff is coming out. Like they did a deluxe release of Jar Jar Binks. First of all, that just seems like hubris on the part of Hasbro. I'm gonna be honest. Nobody wants a deluxe Jar Jar Binks for $30.
I mean, maybe for the joke.
Right, but you know what makes him deluxe? He comes with a big shield.
What?
Like it is what makes him deluxe. He's the same Jar Jar Binks figures, but they're giving him more accessories. And that figure currently on Amazon is $12. A $30 figure has been clearanced out to $12. The weird niche, like we talk about Walgreens exclusives. I sent you that Jigsaw figure.
Yep.
That's a Walgreens exclusive figure. Those unfortunately were like clogging up Walgreens stores, not on the East Coast, but like more Midwest of America right now. They clearanced out those figures that some people have never ever seen in a store to $2.50. Because who knows who Binary is, or who wants a Captain Zemo looking like he did in the 40s comic books. So like it's crazy that like they went all this niche way, and now we're seeing that stuff get clearanced out as new plastic. The price, like all those figures that I talked about, were sold for $20 a figure. Now they go for $25 a figure, the newer ones.
Yep.
So, but those are still at $20 and being clearanced out for like less than $5 in some cases. So I don't know. It kept the doors open and the lights on, doing those figures at the time. But now with everything being inflated, I mean, a Marvel Legends figure by 2025 is probably going to be $30.
Yeah, I mean,
and
like,
that's
it's crazy, but like this is just going to be the way that it's gonna go. I mean, unless there's any type of concept in this country of like inflation reduction in any way, or if there's something done as far as like supply lines being like widened, because a lot of this stuff is happening, at least under the guise of that there's been slowly less and less shit in this world for the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And
more specifically, we've just produced less, or we've lost factories over the last 2 years.
Right.
So it's an interesting time to be involved in that whole plastic collecting thing. And it's one of those things that like I don't think I need it anymore. It was sort of a thing that kept me going in the pandemic. It was a weird thing to look forward to. But now that like I'm finding weird satisfaction at my job again, I find myself buying less and less little things.
I mean, look, man, I'm all for this, but this has to be the third relapse of yours as far as collectible
during the
toy
show.
buying goes.
Oh yeah.
During our recording.
During the Say report alone, yes. I mean, but my whole plan was in 2019, this is going to be the last year that I do it. And then when 2020 happened, it just turned into, I need something to feel alive again.
Oh no, we all fell back on old nostalgia, right? Like that's what we all found something during the pandemic.
Yeah. Speaking of old nostalgia, this is another one where Siege and there's like kind of a mea culpa moment. Spider-Man No Way Home, the More Fun Stuff edition, though I don't know if it's called that anymore. I think maybe they looked at what they were adding and they're like, oh, there's no more fun here. If anything, there's less fun.
We'll talk about that in a second, but get to the end of your apology.
Last week's episode, we talked at length about not knowing when it comes out, and then looked like frickin' donkeys when it came out that coming Friday.
I mean, I don't know how much of donkeys we looked like. We said we literally have no idea this is coming out. What we should have said is it could have already been out for all we knew.
Yeah. It was just one of the things we were like, we don't know anything about it. And we talked at length. But in our episode released on August 29th, September 3rd, 4 days later, Spider-Man No Way Home's More Fun Stuff version was in theaters.
Yeah. The idea that it's out this weekend blew everybody's minds. I do not know of a single person that made the effort to go see this movie or has talked about wanting to, even other than like us, right? Like, and I'm not saying that.
And I don't even want to. I just think it's a funny thing that they're doing.
Yeah, I don't. It's like a weird place to be in. Like I don't really care that this thing exists. So like I can go support it like without much fanfare, right? Like I don't need to. It's just really wild. It's a weird non-entity as far as like
it's a non-event to you and I.
Non-event
in the words of the world. Like it's. I don't know. It's one of those situations where. You know what my mother wanted to go see in theaters this weekend? Jaws in IMAX.
Nice.
They released Jaws in IMAX. And she's like, I don't know if it's only 3D. We got to check. And it is in 2D. But then, you know, we were going to do it yesterday, but it was $3 a ticket for National Cinema Day, which seems like a good idea until you look and then it's all sold out.
Right.
Because you can go see a movie for $3.
Right, and getting to go see Jaws on an IMAX screen for $3 sounds like my kind of Friday, actually.
Too good. It's like It's too good a deal. But that's the one that people have, like, I've heard people talk about, oh, Jaws is back in theaters. And, like, that really says something, that Jaws is back in theaters as opposed to the most successful movie in the last year being back in theaters.
Well, it's just context is just completely different, though, right? Like Jaws coming back to a large screen and a movie that is all about bigness, right? Like the bigness of the shark, selling that on an IMAX screen basically sells itself. So like there's that, there's the time factor, there's the love, right? As much as Spider-Man No Way Home was a huge success financially, you know, we have yet to see if it stands that test of time in terms of whether or not people like truly embrace it and love it. And I'm not saying they won't. I'm just saying we just don't know yet, right? Whereas Jaws is pretty much solid. Like as a people, we have decided that this is one of those movies that just everybody just has to see at least once, and most of you are probably going to enjoy it. Like it's a whole different game, right?
Time for a Say Report nostalgia moment. Going to see Ready Player One and the guy behind me saying I'm really excited to see Steven Spielberg tackle a summer blockbuster. And the person with him going, well, he did Jaws, which invented the summer blockbuster. And that guy just like them being quiet the rest of the night. Sorry, it jumped into my head. Where you're like, Jaws, this movie that everybody didn't see it. It's like, oh yeah, a movie that completely changed like how cinema was marketed and sold, right?
Well, let's not ignore some of his recent statements on like the state of cinema and superhero films specifically. I mean, and let's face it, if you're talking about superhero films, you're talking about Marvel films. Yeah. Like talking about how
Sorry, DC.
They were killing the industry and that they were more about flash and noise than anything else, and it was all of this shit that people could have and have said about his work back in the early like 80s and 90s when they were talking about how with the kind of films he was making were not art because they were making flashy and noisy. It's so to see this weekend when his, you know, his big claim to fame film, summer blockbuster inventor of Jaws, goes up against Spider-Man in a re-release fashion and seeing it completely dominate is an interesting kind of outcome, right? With everything that's been said about the state of cinema over the last 10 years.
Well, I don't know if it completely dominated. I don't have numbers on that. It's just more dominated the interests of people around me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, right.
I just want to make sure that. Yeah.
Let me put it this way: it is a far more interesting release to talk to someone about coming to see than it is to try and sell them to go to see the Spider-Man movie they just saw with me 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, I agree on that level. I don't know. But yeah, so the More Fun Stuff edition happened. Is that gone? Like, it just seems like it's a re-release of Spider-Man No Way Home. And there's been marketing. Like, Andrew Garfield said that there was 10 more minutes of stuff on, I think it was Instagram.
Yeah, I don't know. They're doing a lot more guerrilla marketing for it because guerrilla marketing is in a lot of ways cheaper, right? Like depending on your actors and actresses, getting on social media to just post a thing about your shit is a lot easier than asking them to go on the like interview circuit again, right? Exactly.
And if you're trying to just get profits from the re-release of the movie, you don't want to spend everything you could be making in marketing. So let's do it as cheap as possible. Yeah, I get that. Like,
right. We talked about a lot of this last week, right? Like why would this be re-released? What is going on with it? All of that. Go listen to last week's episode. The thing is that as we pointed out last week, they were kind of fumbling on like actually pushing this thing, and to a point where it almost seemed purposeful to me. I won't put those words in Devin's mouth, but it almost seemed like they were just kind of like backing away from this thing. Disney, Marvel specifically, Sony is probably still like drooling for it. But yeah, because like by all accounts, it's a thing. Like there's not much that has come out of it that has been so mind blowing that people are like, you need to go see this new version of this film.
Yeah. I don't even know what it is. You would imagine that somewhere. Like I would have fallen onto some Twitter thread
Right.
that says, I went to go see No Way Home. Here's what's
Sorry.
different. No, that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so angry. I just ran. No, so the most that I have seen is that on YouTube over the last 24 hours, there's been all of those listicle videos of the 24 things they added to Spider-Man 3, the 11 things they added to Spider-Man 3, we like all of that sort of shit. So like I definitely know it is watchable and viewable out there if you really want to go look that information up, which is the other thing about all this, right? Is like, how much did you enjoy that movie versus do you really want to sit through a 3-hour film again just for 10 more minutes that you didn't see before? And that could be in a 3-hour movie split into so many pieces that we could literally just be talking about like 30-second insert shots.
Yeah. Or like
Yeah.
or a different line read.
Right. Yeah. Give me like that Anchorman 2 like recut where it was basically a completely different movie. Like that kind of shit. I will eat that shit up. But this kind of stuff just doesn't get me to go to a theater. Am I gonna watch it if it ends up on Disney Plus? If it ends up on Disney Plus, sure, I will check it out then for sure, because I'm already paying for that service and I'm sitting in the comfort of my own home. Also, I can skip around and see if I want to just cut to the stuff I didn't see yet, that kind of thing. But I just don't have a huge desire to go and see it in a theater.
Yeah. Agreed. It's not really. I don't know. It just seems so strange. But then, like Endgame, I wasn't a huge fan of Endgame the first time I saw it. I am glad that I went to go see it that second time with my parents, and now I appreciate Endgame. Not to say that I like or love it. Infinity War, I still think is my favorite Avengers film. But when they were like, we're re-releasing it with more footage, I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Thanks, Endgame. And that's the same response I have to something like No Way Home. And No Way Home is something that I enjoyed. Like
Right.
I will say right off and sign off on saying I enjoyed this movie. But like the promise of 10 more minutes is not enough for me to buy another ticket to go see it in the movie theater.
And
If I
like,
had Movie Pass or was still doing AMC and needed like an extra film to get my 3 for the week, maybe I would do it. But when it's
yeah.
my money, no thank you.
Well, and to your original joke, right? The idea of them backing away, not just from this movie in general, but how that we've kind of noticed that they've completely removed any mention of the more fun stuff subtitle that they put on it. Like, I have to imagine that is kind of half true, that they did kind of look at the 10 minutes of added stuff and just went, I mean, it's stuff. Is it all fun stuff? Like it can't be 10 minutes of hilarious, amazing, wonderful like world building footage. Otherwise, why was it cut out of it originally? Right? Like that is also a mentality. And like I know stuff gets cut for all sorts of reasons and blah blah blah. Like there's definitely an argument to be made against that, but you can't deny that has to be the first question you ask, right?
Well, even I've been thinking, right? We called our episode like on June 20th, the Say Report Summer of Fun, More Fun Stuff edition. And now as the summer is winding down, as we're in September, I'm like, did we make good on saying that this was the More Fun Stuff edition of the Say Report? But like,
Yeah.
we can't take it back. When it comes to the marketing, because we already like said, no, it's the More Fun Stuff edition.
Yeah, no,
I don't know. I've had fun. I think that I've had a pretty good summer so far. Can't speak for the Siege Man, but you know.
all I know is that Spider-Man is back out in theaters for at least this past weekend. It may be out in the more in the future. That's all I can say. Because once again, I'm still left with this messaging or this non-messaging on this movie. So I have no idea if it's around for just a couple of weeks, a week,
Yeah,
a
is
month.
it just, did you just re-release it for Labor Day weekend and then it
Right.
goes away? It's interesting. And that's the most I can say on it, is that is an interesting thing that happened next.
Yup.
The saddest thing about it is all I want is Spider-Man to cameo in She-Hulk, and it's not going to happen. Because how are you caught up on She-Hulk, or did you just watch the second episode?
So I've watched the second episode now,
Okay.
only because you told me that it was going to explain to me what was going on, and I will say I still don't know what's going on.
It's a fun lawyer show.
I get that. That's fine, and if that is all it is, that's fine. am curious how they are going to justify apparently making it the longest half an hour comedy series that they have and stuff like that.
Well, 9 episodes, so it'll be yeah. When you say comedy, because WandaVision certainly wasn't a comedy.
Or 10.
It's 9. Kevin Feige has gone on record again saying, we said 10, but it's going to be 9. Okay. I found that when we were discussing it yesterday, after you had received the thing saying we're halfway through She-Hulk.
Yeah, after Disney told me that after 3 episodes they were halfway done, I went looking to see if there was any more out there, and there's more than one article. That IGN one was just the only one that cited Feige, but there was a bunch of stuff that then cited the IGN article. So that's the problem, right? Is that if they had to go back and say it's not 10 episodes, it's too late. There's a ton of places out there where they reported on what IGN said, and what IGN said came directly from Kevin Feige's mouth.
Yeah.
So
I went to the Wikipedia page for She-Hulk, and then I looked in the references. And in the references, it says Feige said we actually ended up going with 9, and then that linked to another article. And I'm just like, man, this is poor marketing. I'm getting my information from the episode numbers posted on things like IMDb, and then I realized that that could be true, but those also have not always been 100% accurate in the past.
Well, yeah, we've never heard of IMDb getting stuff shifted and changed, like straight up titles of films that fuck with Devin.
Yeah, thanks. No, it's
The Vavitch, right? That was the one.
The Vavitch, yes. The Vavitch was the most recent one.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, so Spider-Man's out. We don't know how long it's going to be out. Yeah. If we can get any more information out there, that'd be great. So if somebody wants to woo into existence this information, that
because all we have are the Friday numbers, because they're not reporting how much was sold on National Cinema Day with the $3 tickets.
Yeah, according to Collider, it's looking at a possible $6 million weekend. But I also will point out that National Cinema Day thing is not mentioned anywhere in the articles, so I'm curious if they thought to include that math. / I will also say that you've talked a lot about National Cinema Day, and I was aware that it was a thing because I have access to the internet and stuff. The theaters out here aren't participating in it. There was no National Cinema Day in Utah.
Are you sure? Because
yes.
Cinemark said that it was $3, and I know that you have 2 Cinemark theaters around you.
Maybe the couple of Cinemarks did. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was Cinemark specifically, but we've also got a whole bunch of other different theaters left and right. And
understand that this was 100% price fixing by all of the big chains.
Yeah.
This was AMC, Regal, Cinemark, Showcase, which is not as large, but they're still a multi-million-dollar company.
Right.
That were it was all the chains that had agreed to participate in the $3. None of the smaller local guys like Cinema World or Mystic Luxury had, as far as I knew, were participating in it.
Yeah.
These were the big guys basically throwing their movie dick around to be we can afford to do this to bring people back to the theater and remind them that movie theaters are here.
Especially on a weekend when 2 major films showing that weekend are re-releases of old movies that they're probably not paying the same rights on. But anyway.
Honestly, I don't know what else was new this weekend. Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. That came out on Friday. That's the new release, as far as I know. But that also was day and date to Peacock.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to watch that at home.
Has been doing the festival circuit for a while, unlike, say, a Spider-Man.
It's interesting. It's an interesting thing that they did. But the ones around you, the Cinemarks definitely did it, because they said all of our theaters across. I read the thing. I mean, National Cinema Day also felt like a thing that just came and went. Mm-hmm. I started seeing things on Wednesday of last week, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, are you guys trying not to call attention to it? What are you doing here?
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah. But go to the movies, I guess.
I don't know. There's going to be a new Nicole Kidman AMC commercial, and I'm kind of excited to see it because I hated the first one so much.
I'm excited to see Pinocchio at the end of this week, and that's going to be our streaming thing. I'm not going to theaters for it.
I'm excited to watch Thor: Love and Thunder with the family.
Yeah.
I'm excited for Pinocchio because it looks ridiculous.
I have no idea what... I have to say that I cannot think of a Zemeckis CGI fest. What's the word I'm looking? Motion captures film
Yeah.
that I dislike. Even some of his weirder
Even
ones, like
Beowulf.
Beowulf, right? Like I like even the weird ones. Like I'm a huge fan of. I mean, like I'll be honest, his Jim Carrey Scrooge there. What's the
Christmas
Nightmare Before
Carol?
Christmas? Christmas Carol. Thank you. His Christmas Carol is probably my favorite modern one. Other than the old school one that gets super scary where he throws fucking Scrooge into the into the fucking pit in black and white. Like that will haunt my nightmares forever. But after that, I'm pretty sure Zemeckis' like motion capture one is pretty much my favorite. So like in that sense, I'm very excited for this movie. On the other hand, everything else about it, it just sounds insane.
It's so crazy that Pinocchio is just Pinocchio recreated in 3D.
I mean, it goes in line with their whole redux of old films, right? Like
Yeah.
Dumbo and all of that sort of stuff, and Jungle Book and that. So it does kind of in a weird way. Like I understand where that choice came from, but you're not wrong. It's gonna look fucking wild.
Like I think about the Adventures of Pinocchio from like 95,
Mm-hmm.
and what I really like about that movie, that is kind of nightmare fuel.
Is that the JTT one?
Yeah, with Jonathan
Yeah.
Taylor Thomas.
Mm-hmm. And Martin Landau, right? As Geppetto.
I don't know. I haven't seen this movie, but what I've been thinking of is just the design of Pinocchio and how much like a puppet he looked. Like it was really good the way that they designed the Pinocchio puppet to like come to life in that movie.
Yeah. Yes.
I really enjoyed that. But then to just be like, oh, that's just animated Pinocchio redone. And the fact that he is all animated, right? Like there's no practical to it. Like they didn't remake that little outfit in real clothing. Like they,
yeah. Like I think of what a really good example of this is actually the latest Winnie the Pooh movie with Ewan McGregor there. What was the I forget.
oh,
I forget what the
searching
name of it.
for Mr. Banks. No, that was the other one.
But it was all of the old time animated, not the animated versions of Winnie the Pooh, but rather
They were the
the
book
illustrations
version, yeah.
from the books, right? And they brought those to life, and there is practical stuff going on there because like there is physicality to them and stuff, but there's still moments where they're pure CGI. Like you gotta hope that there's some of that, right? Because like again, that's Disney doing it wonderfully, going back to this style that was not originally the CGI like monstrosity. But I'll be honest, I haven't seen any of Pinocchio specifically. I've heard that that's what's going on with Pinocchio, but everything I've seen as far as like previews and stuff go has all been like avoiding Pinocchio. Pinocchio is always off screen, and again, in a weird way, I kind of want the whole movie to
That'd be an incredible
off-screen
movie.
Pinocchio, you just imagine him yourself.
And just Jiminy Cricket. No, Pinocchio, don't smoke that cigar. Oh, look, you got donkey ears now.
Now you're a real jackass. Yeah. Oh man.
Oh no, Pinocchio, you were swallowed by a whale. And then also it's weird because like Guillermo del Toro's is coming out this year, and I'm way more interested in that.
Yeah, well,
Like-
Guillermo's has been something in the water for. I mean, he famously is one of those guys that always has too many like pokers in the fire, right?
Yeah.
Like he's always got like 10 jobs that he's working through, and this is one that he's been working on for over a decade. I remember actually talking to someone once about it, and them being like super shitty because they basically were like, it can't be real, and this all has to just be like internet hoax stuff, basically, because of the few images that had come out, and then it didn't come out for a few years, and I just started to feel like maybe he was right the whole time. So it also there's a little sense of of celebration of that movie finally coming out because I just get to be like, told you, motherfucker.
I want to assume who that is, but I don't want to say it on the show.
No, I don't think you'd be able to figure it
Oh,
out.
good,
It was
okay.
somebody from my side life that I lead.
Okay. I was thinking back to university, and
No,
there was
I-
one beshorted gentleman.
Shorted. No, there was it was a grad school thing.
Oh, okay.
We're not going to get into that.
No,
but-
no, we don't need to.
but yeah,
well,
no, so-
now
so,
if it's
like-
grad school, there's a person who I think, but also I don't think he would have cared. This is fun. This is good. This is tell don't show is what
This
we're
a
doing
really
right
good
now.
Radio that we're doing right now. Yeah, so there's just a whole bunch of weird stuff going on with movies and the whole like release stuff and I mean even on the streaming stuff, right? Because we're kind of all still recovering from whatever the fuck happened over at HBO, the choices that are being made. I guess more has come out from the Discovery CEO that took over in this whole merger
David
about
Zaslav. I just like saying his name.
Yeah, so their big aim, they feel that they've been aiming too long for the coasts, and they really want to try and hit more mid America families. And I guess the last time he said this exact kind of language was at Discovery, which is what led to their whole change and shift over to reality television. So just not saying that we have evidence that that's where things are going at HBO, but just keep in mind that the last time this exact guy started talking like this, he turned Discovery into what we all now know Discovery to channel to be. So gives you a pretty clear idea of where we're headed.
I have no proof that there's going to be a requel to Honey Boo Boo, but I am going to start creating merchandise.
Oh yeah, right. A fucking like HBO docu-series, right? Like
Honey Boo Boo as an adult putting her child through the same stuff. It's going to be crazy.
And then there'll be a filmed version of it, and somehow they'll get like Lena Headey to come in and play Boo Boo.
And Jennifer Aniston will be your mean mom, just like in that movie where she was the mean mom.
Cake?
No. It's a beauty pageant one. It's a Netflix original movie. Her like overweight daughter wants to do a beauty pageant thing, and she's like, "No, they're not gonna respect you." It's a really good movie. I'm upset that I can't remember the name of it.
I will look it up. Don't worry.
All right, I appreciate that. I look forward to you delivering that information about. It was a really good movie. I really liked it. Other things that are happening at the end of this week that I'm excited for: Cobra Kai. What? Dumpling. Dumpling. Yes. That was a good movie. Dumpling's a good movie if you're looking for something on Netflix.
Okay, you wanted to talk a little bit more about Cobra Kai. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that Cobra Kai Season 5 is coming, and I'm stupid excited.
Nice. Well, like, if we're going to talk about reliving our love of the 80s, I really, really, really want to talk about the Gremlins.
Where did the Gremlins go?
Like, you just can't. So, we have not talked much about it, but we must have at least mentioned at some point that the WB fighting game, the free-to-play fighting game, Multiverses.
Pause off for everybody for just 1 second. We're going to talk about Multiverses right now. We have not talked about it ever. Okay. Like, it's just one of those things that was coming, and I think we both knew about it, and we talked about it off mic. This is the time. So
yeah, well, so it's a weird. So for us, it's a weird thing for us to talk about or care about because it's a free, for all intents and purposes, a phone game, right? Like it's available in other places, but that is the.
I actually don't think it's available on phones, is it?
I think it was being sold as a phone app to me on my phone the other
day.
But maybe
I thought it was a console. It's essentially a phone game on a console, is what I thought. I didn't know it had a phone game of component to it.
Right. Whatever the case may be about where it's available, the mentality is definitely let's give this all the people for free, and then they can spend a bunch of money on cosmetics or other fighters or all of this sort of shit, right? So it is not something we normally tackle for a multitude of reasons, right? But it's an interesting thing only in that WB is leaning so heavily into the various licenses that they have that it's a pretty wild like roster of people in this game, right? People you would expect, right? Like people like Batman. Obviously, if you have access to Batman, you're putting him in a fighting game, right? But then the other side of that is like talk about getting Harry Potter eventually in there. Eventually, you're gonna have Harry Potter fighting Batman. Right, like I mean, and then who else from Harry Potter do you get, right? Because with Batman comes along with somebody like Harley Quinn, also like his entire rogue gallery. Robin can eventually show up, Nightwing, that kind of stuff. Superman, right? But like
Superman is his own thing. Superman is not a supporting character to Batman.
Well, but if you're introducing Batman, you're opening the door to DC Comics,
yes.
Right? If you're introducing Harry,
come on. If your countdown of Batman, Robin, Nightwing, I guess Superman, like that diminished Superman in a way that we need to do better.
Why? Okay, first of all, point at Superman and point at Batman, and which one does you think WB considers to be their headliner? Who can make a movie that makes money? Who can lead a franchise? Who can make sure that they can always go back to that well and guarantee that they'll get fan love and cash love?
It's 2022, right?
Yeah.
It's not the 70s?
Yeah.
So Batman.
Yeah. So anyway.
Hey, Batman.
to that point, if you're introducing the idea that Batman and his buddies can be there, right, then Harry Potter and his buddies can be there, right? So who are Harry Potter's buddies, right? You don't want to just bring in just like Ron and Hermione because like they're all just wizards, right? You want to run that gambit, right? Like bring in like Hagrid, right?
Oh my God, Hagrid
That would
and
be
his
a great
big
one.
motorcycle. He'd
That
be
would
like
be right?
Wario.
Or do you go just fucking buck wild and have them bring in like Bellatrix Lestrange or fucking Voldemort,
I mean,
right?
Buckbeak, right? They have that like rain dog character that's made for the game, the reindeer dog that it just terrifies me. Bring in Buckbeak.
There's the
We don't talk enough about Harry Potter on this show, and I'm not saying that needs to change. I just am realizing how much Harry Potter I know and how little I've said into this microphone.
but there's this whole idea, right? Like that I mean, we've had bringing Voldemort into this game would be wild until you consider the fact that they put Sephiroth in fucking Smash Brothers and he's basically the same character. So like they could be so WB could be looking at these other fighting game rosters that are out there and saying we could do anything. We could do anything. But
Dude, the thing that we're bearing the lead, the fact that like Arya Stark is in Multiverses. That
Yes.
is a TVMA hard like property.
Also Steven Universe, right?
Yeah,
Or is that
yeah.
So
I
like
think,
they
yeah, Garnet's there, but then also so Steven. Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to. I didn't know if Steven was a character, but he is.
But like that idea, right? That you could have Arya Stark fighting fucking just one of the one of the diamonds or whatever they're called.
The
Like,
gems.
gems, thank you. But like this whole like fucking this concept just gets crazier and crazier. And so to that, right, the latest news is that WB was like, fuck it, we're doing Gremlin. And the reason that I specifically, first, they're getting introduced alongside Black Adam, which is, I think, fucking wonderful. But the real reason that I wanted to even talk about any of this is that there is a lot of weird discussion out there at the moment about the mechanics of the Gremlins, both in game and in the real world, because every time you talk about the Gremlins, there's always a discussion of mechanics. But the ways in which that's going to then play out in game. And so right now the running theories, there's two main theories, is that they're two separate characters. You were going to get is Spike, the Gremlin, and I imagine that it's not going to be him in Mogwai form. When they said Spike, I imagine they mean Gremlin Spike.
Is it Spike or is it Stripe?
Stripe. Well, I always know him as Mohawk, which is what he is in the second movie, and it's weird because he's not technically the same, but they are technically the same. Well, Gremlin genealogy is like a huge thing that's also debated in the fan base because they both come from the same Mogwai mother.
Yeah,
right.
It's really really weird. But
Right,
that's why
so
I
it's
didn't
a
know if it was
Gizmo,
Stripe or if it was
So-
Spike. Is technically what they call Mohawks, because to differentiate the fact that he's technically a different character, because it's not like he retains all of his knowledge from the first Gremlins movie.
Yeah, it's weird because people talk about them as if they are. If you look them up on like the wiki and stuff, and if you talk in like groups, there are people that will talk about them as if they're the same character in both movies. But as Devin's saying, they just simply can't be, right? They just can't be, unless you ascribe to the idea that that fucking Gizmo like births the same like children each time, right? Which is a weird idea, but they are mythical creatures, so who knows? So this is the discussion: they're either going to be two different playable characters, right? And Gizmo is going to get to be, I hope he gets to be like badass Gizmo from the second movie. It'd be really weird if they lean into like fear attacks or something from the first one.
Well, yeah, you could definitely. I'm sure that the Rambo Gizmo will be a skin you can buy for $14.
Yeah, but then if he's not Rambo Gizmo, what other moves does he have? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So-
he just sings. He's like Jigglypuff. He's
Yeah,
Jigglypuff.
there you go.
That's what
There
he's
it
going to be.
is. Yeah, so then the other reigning theory is that they'll actually be two forms, a la Zero Suit Samus, where like you basically
or
fight.
Sheik, or the two from the Fire Emblem game,
Right.
Kira
Or
and whatever.
you play as him, and then maybe like a particular move. You play as Gizmo, but then a particular move that you use births forth Stripe in order to like take over, which is first of all, horrifying, weird. What happens to Gizmo in that game? Like, there's a whole bunch of questions there. But from a gaming mechanic standpoint, I just don't think that they would do that, right? They have to be treating them as two different characters. But this is the discussion right now: is which way are they going to go? Because, like, Gremlins lore, it'd be really weird way for them to play with the lore. I guess also Stripe has also shown up as a character in other. I should point this out, in other Gremlins media, like video games and books and comics and stuff. And so the establishment that Stripe can be reborn is apparently already part of the quote unquote
mythos,
canon.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not something that is directly addressed in the second movie. But like, so the idea being that Stripe could just be continuously coming back again and again and again, right? My real question is, though, is that if Stripe loses, like, he has to be destroyed on screen, right? Like squished or put in a blender or something. like
So I have the problem that I have with this. Oh my god. Fuck you for bringing Gremlins into this. All the Gremlin thoughts that I just try to keep down. Gremlins die in sunlight.
Right.
So, like, first of all, they're going to be fighting in almost every Multiverses stage that I've seen is outdoor in sunlight.
Yeah.
So we're just like, all right, we're writing that thing off. If there were water, right? Like, say Tom and Jerry or, I don't know, Joker could, like, squirt water at you. If a Mogwai gets wet with water, they're supposed to multiply, right? Mogwai or Gremlin, what the water does is cause multiplication of the species.
Right.
But, like, you can't just make that a thing that happens, right? For the one character. That'd be too much coding that would go into that.
For a free game,
yeah.
where its entire mentality is make as cheap as possible so that you can sell as much as you can and make all that profit. Like, there's no way that mentality is going to lead to them specifically designing this character.
Specifically designing Gizmo and Stripe to follow the 3 rules of Gremlins. Like, it bothers me more than the Iron Giant showing up in this fighting game and everybody being like, but he doesn't want to be a weapon. And he's like, well, he doesn't want to be used as a weapon. He wants to be independent. And also, by, like, all accounts, Multiverses, they're just like, hey, we're hanging out this weekend. Why don't we, like, just beat each other up? Why don't we just have Fight Club this weekend?
Right, exactly. There's like a story to it that kind of justifies why all these people that would normally not fight each other get to. It's not a great one, but it's there, right? And I mean, like, right, if you're gonna complain, if you're gonna start complaining at Iron Giant, you've already missed like 6 other stops. Like,
yeah. But that's the other thing, though, is that, like, if you're going to complain about Iron Giant, I hope you're also going to complain about the Gremlins being able to fight in daylight when naturally that's how they win, right?
Yeah.
Every Gremlins, the victory comes. Well, no, Gremlins 2, they take the electric Gremlin and somehow blow up that building. I don't really like Gremlins 2. I liked it as a kid.
They get them. They do get most of them rounded up in the foyer and open the windows and kill them. That is a huge part of Gremlins 2.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm like, I know that there's a part of it, but then there's that other part where the super Gremlins, the Gremlins that get into the genetics lab.
Right.
They're killed by catching the lightning gremlin, turning on the sprinklers, and releasing him so that they all get electrocuted and die.
But does that kill Electric Gremlin, or is he out there still? Actually, I think that actually does end, right?
I'm pretty sure that it does end with his like little face showing up. The Electric Gremlin, I have a toy of him somewhere. He's crazy. I love him.
The second movie is just nuts. The second movie is the one where they do the whole Looney Tunes like opening and closing, don't they?
Yeah. The first Gremlins is great, except for the one scene that I know will not be referenced in Multiverses of Phoebe Cates' father dying because he gets stuck in the chimney.
Oh man, I will say that you made it sound like for somehow that scene is not a classic scene in cinema history.
Oh, that's not what I mean. I mean, it's just like, that is wonderful. That is a wonderful sequence. It's one of these things that, like, Gremlins is a horror movie. For however we choose to remember it as a society, at its base, Gremlins is a horror movie.
Yeah.
And but the moment in that movie that is most horrific is Phoebe Cates being like, I'm not really a fan of Christmas. Why? Why are you not a fan of Christmas? Well, when I was 12, my dad went down the chimney and he got stuck. We didn't find him for weeks. And you're just like, What the fuck,
Yeah, yeah,
Gremlins?
yeah, yeah, yeah. They do also fling an old lady out of a window in that movie. I mean, it's
You
pretty
know, I
horrific
have
in other
no issue
ways.
for defenestration. Defenestration is something that I absolutely love, especially with the elderly. That's really where Gremlins sells me. It is the Phoebe Cates story of my dad dresses up like Santa and comes down the chimney. And one year we just thought he was gone, but turns out he got stuck and died in the chimney. It's one of those moments where, like, yeah, no wonder you don't like Christmas.
Oh
I
man.
get it. I understand. I also, whenever I think about Gremlins, I think about the movie Dear White People. Specifically the movie. I've never watched the show, and the trailer for that was her in a film class getting yelled at by the professor for her take that the Gremlins were meant to represent urbanization of suburban areas, and him being like, "What a ridiculous thing," and I'm just like, "That's been written about since Gremlins came out." Like, I'd be mad at her because she essentially plagiarized for like generations and presented it as a new idea. Don't be mad at her because she presented something that the weekend Gremlins came out, there was an article written about the subtext in Gremlins and what it's supposed to represent.
Yeah. we're not we're not talking about Dear White People right now, so we're not going to get into to breaking that scene down. But
But
man,
Dear White
fucking
People, that's not owned by Netflix, right? Because it'd be pretty great if any of those characters wound up in Multiverses. That's what Netflix needs. Netflix needs its own Smash Brothers style fighter.
it wants it, look, it really wants a franchise that it can milk. It has been open about that. Like Netflix is like, well, whatever. But like Netflix has said time and again that they really do want something that they can lean into that sort of stuff, right? And like a fighting game that introduces a concept where like you get the kids from Stranger Things going going up against the guys in Disenchantment, like that would be phenomenal. And then inevitably getting the 1 hour special that is the like
That
film
that
version of
is the
that
film version
story.
of the story. Yeah.
Yeah, would be so good.
Hi Netflix, we solved your problem.
It is, by the way, owned by Netflix.
Okay, yeah. Well then there you go. I know, I know that they did the TV show and like I want to watch it, but that movie was so disappointing. I was looking forward to it so much, and then I saw it and I'm like, you guys kept like getting right to the edge of like trying to say something and then you pulled away.
Yeah.
And again, that's me as not, I don't know. Like I'm not black, right? That movie is not. It's called Dear White People for a reason, but it's not like I don't have friends who tell me that stuff and like, oh, you guys almost got there, and then you stopped.
Yeah,
They
I
felt
mean,
like they played it safe, and I don't. It was disappointing.
I think for a movie that is geared towards a white audience, learning about that world, playing it safe might be, and not that that is like that is the structure, right? That is the
Yeah,
concept. I'm not saying that that is what the movie is actually doing, but like if that is the structure you're going for, it sounds like they're right in line with that. That's all
true.
I'm saying.
Very true.
But back to Gremlins.
Sorry.
The other big thing about what's going on with the Gremlins in this game is clearly that they're setting them up because they're going to be leaning into some Gremlins based.
I think some
Yeah.
Gremlin TV show is happening, right? As far as I
Yeah,
know, like,
there, and I think it might even be on Netflix actually. But yeah,
well, that'd be stupid. You should put it on HBO Max.
no, you don't want it on HBO Max.
No,
Protect
because
it,
then it will
save
die, right?
Yeah, no, this is something that we talked about with Sandman, right?
Yeah.
With the idea being that it is a WB based product, but that they are using Netflix as the way to get it out there, which means that they don't have to spend as much money, right? They could just get all the profit. Ideally, obviously, I don't know how this stuff actually works in contracts. Who knows? Maybe they got the short end of the stick on Sandman, and maybe that's making them rethink stuff. But I think that Gremlins not being on HBO Max is a good sign, considering the way that HBO Max is going with the discussion we had at the beginning of all this. Yeah, so they're just kind of leaning into bringing the Gremlins back into everybody's eye line.
Collective
So
consciousness. Yeah.
we'll see what else comes from this. But I'm excited, right? Like this goofy kind of shit of them showing up is actually, I think, perfect for what they always were. These goofy ass characters that are, as you pointed out, really at their heart horrific, and like the fact that we all seem to love them still is pretty amazing to me.
Well, I mean, it's all the work of the new batch. Gremlins 2, the new batch, is the greatest like PR makeover for anything in society in the
Yeah.
longest amount of time.
The thing to keep in mind, though, is what was happening is that kids already were loving
Like
Gremlins.
yeah.
So they were basically trying to figure out a way that they could make like a family-friendly version to actually make money off of. Because the one thing that wasn't helping them was the original movie. But they were selling toys like crazy. I remember being a kid, and my aunt had 3 different size gizmos in the house.
Yeah, because he was a great character, and he's voiced by Howie Mandel.
Everyone's favorite.
Every
child's favorite.
Everyone's favorite America's Got Talent judge. Howie
He also
Mandel.
did Bobby's World, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he
Yeah,
did
the
a lot
man-
of things.
the man
Deal or
had a-
No Deal. He's had he can blow up
Regular Steve Allen.
he can blow up a latex glove by putting it over his nose. What a weird thing that he's done. YouTube that. YouTube Howie Mandel inflates glove.
Well, I mean, it just kind of shows you the state of cocaine-driven comedy of the late 80s that led to the inevitable, like, boring comedy of the 90s.
Oh, man. Yeah, it does. No truer words have ever been said on the Slaver board than that sentence right there. I don't know, but Multiverses is something that I am not interested in. I want to make sure that I put that down. I was almost there. Like the beta came out, and I'm like, I'll give it a try. But then I watched people play it, and I'm like, oh right, I kind of hate Smash Brothers, and it is the most refined version of this. I am not interested in the like knockoff Smash Brothers game that is slower. The game just looks like it moves slower than Smash Brothers, and also is all pay to win type stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And then I think about like I did the Nicktoon All Star Brawl because it was free with PlayStation Plus, and that sucked. Like that was just awful.
Yeah, there's been some good ones over the years, though. There's actually a really wild Kung Fu Panda one that's really good. And Ragdoll was a Kung Fu Ragdoll?
Yeah, I know the Ragdoll Kung Fu.
That was a big one for a bit around in certain circles. The problem with fighting games is that they are so tied to their audiences and like their existence that it's hard to introduce a new one, right? The big guys already have their built-in audiences. You know, you have your Street Fighters, your Soul Calibur guys, your Mortal Kombat guys. But there's this idea being that like if a new game comes in, it's really hard for it to kind of break through without a lot of work. Funny enough, like some of the best ones to do it are like the sillier ones like Dive Kick.
Yeah.
Dive Kick got huge because of the gimmick, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we all learned from that is that you can start a new fighting game, but you got to knowing what your gimmick is right away. And for a lot of these companies, that just means, you know, who can we put on screen? They realized with a lot of the DLC packs going on with Mortal Kombat and the Injustice games blowing up like they did, that sometimes you could sell an entire fighting game just based on who was fighting, and that's where you get stuff like the Nintendo Brawl Stars or whatever, and this kind of stuff. But there's other gimmicks that you can use instead and are much more interesting. You know, like Gang Beasts was really fun. Like I don't know if you ever played it, or if you ever did the Human Fall Flat, which is the like platformer that came from that same like technology, that same company. It's really, really funny, but like it's very, I would say like almost like QWOP, the fighting game.
All things that I'm aware of, but I've never given my time.
It's just like weird. Like there's weird stuff out there that you can get into if this is your kind of jam. Like I have always found more charm and more fun in the weirder ones than I ever had in any of the big guys putting out yet another, you know, basic like roster update. That's more like Soul Calibur has been disappointing to me since Soul Calibur 2. I will say Mortal Kombat doing its whole like revive in the 2010s was really cool to watch.
Mortal Kombat 9 was excellent. I was just thinking about, I got brought into that because I had given Mortal Kombat versus DC a try. Like I rented it, and I'm like, oh my god, there's like a story mode, and the story in that game is excellent. Why they're all fighting with the fact that like rage is just bleeding through into their two worlds is so cool. And then you get Mortal Kombat 9, which is fantastic, a retelling of the original 3 games, but like the events of those original games still happened, but like now it is going back and someone messing with the timeline.
Right.
Like it was really cool. But that's the thing. But right now, what I'm looking forward to, fighting game wise, they teased the new Tekken, and my time with Tekken 7, like on release weekend, like I platinumed it in 48 hours. Like I would love to get that out of Tekken 8. And even though Street Fighter 5 was such a piece of garbage, like unfinished, we want you to buy characters piece of garbage, I really kind of want to go all in on Street Fighter 6. Like these are the ways that I feel.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll
Give
see
me
what
another
happens.
DOA,
Yeah.
man. Give me another DOA movie, really. Honestly,
That movie is
first
fantastic.
One is,
Oh.
I cannot believe how much fun that movie is.
We're gonna cover that on the show someday. I'm just gonna say it. Friggin' Joy from My Name Is Earl is so good in that movie.
Yeah, she's the brawler, right? Like
Yeah.
she's the wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jamie, I can't think of her last names. All I can think of is Jamie Lynn Spears, and that's not her. Jamie something though. He can look it up. But Joy from My Name Is Earl, big fan of My Name Is Earl. Sorry. So you had also said there were things that you wanted to talk about last week that I kind of like dominated. Do you want to address any of that in this during episode?
Jamie Presley. Okay.
Jamie
I was
Presley,
Not crazy.
okay.
But then I just watched Elvis this weekend.
The Tom Hanks Elvis?
I put Elvis and then instantly walked away from the TV and never came back. It was that engaging. I have to give it another go. It was
He's
not
white?
But that was what I was worried. That was why I was thinking Presley. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
I have to double check that because I might just be more meshing all of my fucking fandoms today like I always do. I don't know, man. Like last week, what were we doing? What were we talking about?
I don't know. You said that you had stuff and that I had unfortunately kind of like dominated.
Yeah, but that was last week. A whole new week has happened.
I don't know if you take notes or anything like that. I wanted to make sure you had some floor time in this episode that is probably going to be disappointing, as most second chapters and trilogies are.
Oh shit, no, just still going through Sandman, still watching through stuff. We talked a little bit more about getting caught up on She-Hulk and all that. There's really just not been too much going on. I've been really diving into redoing a bunch of like older games on my OLED. I've just been kind of digging that.
No, I'm glad that you're enjoying that. I've been doing Blossom Tales. The second dungeon was excellent. I completed that yesterday. I feel like it's going to have the same issue of Blossom Tale 1, where it's just going to be 3 dungeons and then the end of the game, though, which is a weird way to feel about it. Like, it feels so, like there's so much in between the dungeons that also almost feels kind of inconsequential. I don't know. I feel really weird about this game. I enjoy it. I like that it's sort of a retelling of Labyrinth, except that it's her brother who's becoming the Minotaur Prince instead of Toby who's becoming the Goblin Prince. Spoilers for Blossom Tale 2.
Nice.
It's also kind of Hook. Like, after you beat the second dungeon, huge spoilers for Blossom Tales 2. Sorry, Sejin. There's a whole sequence where the Minotaur King plays catch with him, and I'm like, wow, this is like ripped right from Hook.
Yeah.
Right? Where he plays baseball with Robin Williams' son. I can't remember his name. Is it Jamie? Is that his name?
Oh man, I don't know at all. You're asking if you could call it.
I haven't seen Hook since I saw it in theaters in '91. Like, it's one of those movies that I've never really gone back to.
It's Dustin Hoffman, right?
Dustin Hoffman is Captain Hook, yes.
Yeah.
And Smee is Bob Hoskins. And they just decided, oh, by the way, we're a gay couple. We're not getting through this Steven Spielberg movie. A lot of Steven Spielberg this week. If we don't pretend that we're a couple this whole movie.
Oh man, no, there's not been too much crazy shit going on. I rewatched Neverending Story this week. I love that movie. It's one of those big ones that just holds up for me. You know, like there's a certain like era of film where you can just, you know, there's just been surefire hits, right, of like the 80s and the early 90s. So like I just have a lot of stuff from that time that I could just put on and just be happy. Neverending Story, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you know, Gremlins, like I can just lean back on those films just because I just, they're adorable. I was watching Neverending Story and trying to explain to somebody like why practical like work and like that movie and why characters that show up in that movie, like why they are so like heavy hitters for us, right? Like why 10, 20, 30 years later we're still buying t-shirts with like the little worm from Labyrinth on them, right? Don't go that way.
Like, she'd gone that way, she'd have gone right to his castle. You little bastard.
God damn it. But there's yeah, like I don't know what it is about that particular era of filmmaking that just kind of created like iconic characters in a way that we don't get often enough anymore. We got Minions. I'll give you that. We got them Minions.
We do have the Minions. I think the reason why is exactly what the Netflix problem. Ooh, this is cool. It all ties together. I'm pretty proud of this. Netflix is desperate to have their own franchise, to have their Star Wars, to have their Lord of the Rings, to have their Harry Potter, right? They've said it multiple times. This is what we at Netflix want. The problem is when that's your goal, you're kind of setting out to fail.
Yeah.
Like Falcor becomes this iconic vision because when they made the Neverending Story, they weren't like, and this is the guy who's gonna sell toys. It's just that like, no, it's cool because he's a dragon and he's a dog. He's a dragon dog.
Yeah, synergy is what you're talking about. Synergy has kind of destroyed any type of creativity.
Yes.
When you're thinking about how is this also going to be a toy and a bath product and a fucking bed sheet, like you're not really worried about how does this product look on screen in this movie that I'm making, this art piece that I'm creating, right?
Right. I mean, Spaceballs was really cynical about that way earlier than these things, but it doesn't change the fact that when they made Neverending Story, they were making a movie. They weren't trying to make a media empire.
Well, keep in mind what Spaceballs was doing was calling out something that George Lucas really, I mean, for all intents and purposes, invented. Like, not invented, but perfected, but to be sure. The reason Spaceballs calls out Star Wars for it is because that is not what everybody's doing, right? He's calling out the fact that that is something that George Lucas uniquely is really focusing on and doing, and so if anything, just kind of highlighting for us the future, the terrible future, I guess.
Right, but it's not like it was a new thing, right? Like that idea was in the water.
Yeah.
But then we don't really see it until, I mean, I guess I'd blame Transformers in a lot of ways. Where
G.I. Joe,
like, I mean,
right?
G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe's an interesting one. Like, it's those two. Those two shows right there are the big property for it. But when you look at G.I. Joe existed beforehand as just like the action doll.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, G.I. Joe was a thing that existed, and then they realized they could make a cartoon to sell it.
Yeah. And I think that that's what they did with Transformers, is we'll import these Japanese toys. We don't need to make anything. We just bring in these toys, and what we spend the money on that we're not spending on fabricating new toys is a 30-minute commercial for these toys.
Right.
And then they're like, oh wow, we're making a lot of money in this. What if though, instead of having to pay the Japanese toy companies for this, we were creating our own characters and then owning the rights to those characters? And that's where they're like, well, we got G.I. Joe. Why don't we use that name that already has name recognition and create our own characters and create our own show there?
Yeah.
So, like, it's a really interesting thing, but you got to think, like, those are also 84, right? TV was the landscape for that. And then, I don't know when, it's Batman. It's Batman 1989 is where that same toyetic energy begins to be harnessed by cinema.
Yeah.
Because it is well documented how Batman 89's toy line revolutionized toys in general.
Well, and that kind of, it was a spark unlike any other, right? Like you had Tim Burton coming in and doing wacky toy looking shit already, which was kind of his whole style. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't gonna detrimentally affect the nature of the product to behave this way, essentially, right?
Right.
So it was like luck of the draw that this movie was coming out in a way that allowed for these toys to exist, that allowed for the marketing to change. But then it showed that, hey, if we could do it once, we can do it again, right? And so
because Dick Tracy, right? Warren Beatty's Dick Tracy. Go listen to our Dick Tracy episode. Tax evasion, I think is what it's called. I'm so happy we explored Dick Tracy on this show, right? Not to synergize with ourselves and use a marketing opportunity, but God, go listen to it. That movie would not have gotten toys if it didn't come out after Batman.
Yeah.
Like, and it's such a weird thing too, where you think that like Batman, I think it was Kenner who had the license for that. You correct me if I'm wrong, listeners of the show and the internet. I know that you're out there and you're ready to correct someone when they're wrong about a toy company. But the fact that it wasn't Playmates who had sort of been ruling the roost with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles line, that's why Playmates was all hopped up to be like, hey, Dick Tracy, we want to make toys for you. And then they essentially just take the turtle aesthetic and apply it to the characters from Dick Tracy. So, like, it's this whole weird thing. Yeah. But that's when it bleeds into movies, and we see more of the movie tie-in stuff. And Kenner was already fat on the hog from all the Star Wars stuff, right? So it kind of made sense that they'd be like, oh, we'll do Batman too. Like, it all synergizes in these weird, disgusting ways.
Yeah, but what then ends up happening is the ways that then leads to a bunch of stuff in movies just kind of not being fun to look at anymore, which is weird when you're considering what they're trying to do is create an iconic character to sell a toy of.
Yeah, not being fun to look at, more thinking about like, oh, this is going to sell 1 million action figures. And it's, oh, okay, well, that's something. I mean, that's Jurassic Park. We're lucky that Jurassic Park succeeds the way it does and that we get more of those because that toy line was basically dead on arrival except for the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Kids love the dinosaurs, and it's like, that makes sense. But all the human stuff from that, another Kenner line, was like, this is waste. This is awful.
Yeah.
That one might have been Mattel. But think about, like, Aliens 3 has action figures.
Right.
Aliens 3 has action figures because Batman 89 made a shit ton of money selling action figures. I don't need to keep saying it, but it's just one of those situations where, like, you think about those things in the 80s that, like, meant to us. The Goonies, if the Goonies were made freaking 4 years later, there would have been a Goonie line of toys.
Right.
And there wasn't. Even though that, like, ripe for it, right? You have 7 figures right off the bean in the Goonies, right?
Yeah, and one of them has contraptions and add-ons and there's all sorts of good, like, props you can put with them. Like, imagine getting, like, a Josh Brolin with, like, a skull candle or something. Like, there'd be all sorts of, like,
Josh Brolin with the stretchy thing that they tie him up with.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like,
Chunk. I mean, yeah, there's all sorts of characters, you know, and we see now that there are retro lines that go back and do this kind of stuff, but these are not toys that existed then.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Those things that are iconic to us in cinema are iconic to us because that was the only way we could interact with them, right? You didn't have a Falcor toy when you were a kid, did you?
Right.
Because they weren't thinking of that. They were thinking of making the movie, and then the movie has to stand on its own. But now they're thinking about, oh, well, the movie will exist, and then we want the kids on the way home to say, Mom, I'd really like a Minions figure.
Well, it's the equivalent of, like, save that, right? Like cut that out or make, like, you start to get really cynical about, like, their choice to not include, like, a thing. Like, say, anytime that they bring a Marvel movie into existence and you have all these fans that want to see this version of the character or this prop with the character, this thing, and then it's not in the movie. And that's disappointing, but, I mean, it's only a 2-hour film. Well, you're only going to get what you can get into it, right? But the toys allow them to take that version of that character and suddenly put the Darkhold in their hand or some nonsense like that, or give them the weird paint job that they had for that weird time in the 90s. Like, it's amazing the way that the toy line kind of picks up the slack in that way and starts to get you very scared about, like, are they purposely waiting on that because they know they can sell the toy if it's not in the movie or not on the show.
Yeah, to finally wrap things back to Thor: Love and Thunder, right? Which is coming this week on Disney Plus. Watch it, because we do have a Thor: Love and Thunder episode ready to be released, and if you're prepared, then it won't be a surprise for you. Gore in Thor: Love and Thunder, the Christian Bale version of that character, they sold that toy in the Marvel Legends line, and it looks very much like Christian Bale, but they had to make a lot of concessions to what that character was in the comics. For licensing reasons, they couldn't reference anything related to symbiotes with his character, despite the fact that his sword, which is not the Necro sword in the comics, is all black, which is essentially a symbiote from an earlier evolutionary line. So he doesn't get that. He's not as alien looking because they didn't want to do CGI for Christian Bale. They wanted to have him in practical stuff. So the only figure that comes out is that Marvel Legends version of Christian Bale. And then just this past week, they released a Gore comic accurate version of that figure. That's an Amazon exclusive that, because of that exclusive status, is $7 more expensive than the original version of that character. And one of the reasons why is that everybody complained that they didn't get the Gore from the comics. So they kind of got that market research that, like, there are people who want that figure. Let's do it. Let's get it into action.
Yeah.
So then it releases, Thor came out in May, right? No, it was July. It was July that it came out. I mean, that movie came out in July. The toys came out in May. Like, that's enough time for them to throw together an actual Gore figure. And I'm sure they were, like, working on it. Like, do we want to release both of them in the main line? And they're like, no, we'll just do the one, and then we have the idea later on if there's an interest. It's weird. It's just, like, marketing has really ruined everything is, I guess, the essential of this.
Yeah, I mean, we always come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been wild because, like I said, we were watching some old Neverending Story, and like there's just huge parts of that movie that I remember as like so important and iconic, but like those characters, they only show up for that like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Other than that, they don't exist in the story anymore, and it's not like there's like a backlog of Neverending Story like mythos for me to like point to. Well, like, I just love that character for the 10 minutes they're on screen. You know, the same goes for something like a Labyrinth and things like that, or Dark Crystal and all that. Yeah, I don't know. It's just I'm looking for that thing right now that like I can like geek out on and nerd out about. That's not 30 years old. You know, and you know, some things come close. Sandman's been a blast, but that's only 8 episodes, so we'll see if there's more of that. You know, the Marvel show stuff, we talk about how they're just kind of all over the place. We never know what's going on with them, so like I enjoy them while I can, but like trying to follow them anymore is like gives me heart palpitations.
Oh, you say that. She-Hulk is doing everything right for me right now. I don't know if I can actually persuade you to it, but if in our next episode, our wrap up to what this whole weird experiment has been, you can be caught up with all 4 episodes and we can give it a proper 4-episode test, that would be very cool. Yeah. Especially with who showed up at the end of the 3rd episode, and in one of those situations where at the end of the episode, my mother looked at me and she's like, who the fuck are they supposed to be? And I'm like, well, and I like detailed the whole thing, and she's like, oh, okay, as long as there's precedent for those characters, because it seemed ridiculous and like it came from nowhere. And I'm like, no, actually, of the characters that they could like just insert into a series like this, they are the easiest ones to do it. and like it feels like it's been a situation since we saw New Asgard in frickin' Endgame. Like, this is going to be what's gonna happen. And that's interesting to me. That, like, just at the end of the day, that is super interesting to see. It feels right now Phase 4 is very disjointed, and some of the stuff is coming from nowhere, which makes sense when you think of things like Shang-Chi, which is a year old. Happy celebrations to Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations where, like, yeah, they're introducing a lot of things and they're exploring a lot of the world that we hadn't seen before, but that doesn't mean that they weren't slowly establishing ways for characters to happen with some of the background action.
I mean, I don't know. People talk about the how things feel desperate right now, but like I would point to like look at the first phase of Marvel when they were all doing their own thing. They just happened to have like an after credit scene that tied them together. Or the fact that we were sitting in the middle of everybody bitching about how they didn't want to have to keep track of everything. They wish they could just go to a Marvel movie and just enjoy that movie. Like, this is it. Like right now, this is the time to do that. So I don't know. I that conversation always kind of irks me.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I don't mean to irk or anything like that. I was just very happy with that. Like, oh, cool. Like, clearly they have a plan, right?
Yeah.
These characters being introduced in the way that they were introduced tells me don't doubt what they're doing because they're covering a lot of ground while also making sure that everything has like a connective feel to it. The problem with She-Hulk, right? And you keep saying that you're not sure what it's supposed to be. She-Hulk, from where I'm sitting right now, having watched 3 episodes, and we can see if you're able to catch up and we can have a deeper discussion next week on the show. Right now, what She-Hulk is building out the Marvel Universe for me in ways that have been necessary for me as a viewer. Like, it's one thing to only focus on the big events that are happening in movies, but it's nice to see that ground level stuff, which Miss Marvel also did a lot of, but by the nature of it being She-Hulk and her ability to like break the fourth wall, which has been there from the very first volume of She-Hulk, where she yelled at Bob Badinsky for what happened in the issue. Like, they get to do it in a way where like, we're on board with you. We understand that these are things that you kind of needed to know about. And this is what the show is trying to do. I don't know. I'm so on board for the show. And I hope that you get there too, is what I'm saying. Like,
let me make sure that I'm clear here. I'm very much enjoying it. I'm on board with it.
Okay.
I just don't know what the plot line is right now. Like, literally just need to know what like the main end goal of this show is, because right now I don't understand why things are happening. Like, that's when I say that I don't know what this show is doing. I literally don't know what the plot of She-Hulk is right now.
Yeah, but like, I don't know if I guess that's an interesting thing. Shows do kind of have plots now. It's not like Cheers where we're just going to go to this bar every week.
Yeah, I mean, like, look at like WandaVision, where there is a clear end game to what that story is doing, right? Or even in or even in Miss Marvel, like the introduction of the mystery of what the bracelet is and what is going on is the thing to watch for, right? With Miss Marvel, there's not an overarching like plot line that like I am trying to piece together or figure out. So like, that's fine. But it feels very sitcom-y in that way of like at the end of each episode, we're just kind of done. Now, episode 2 definitely had like introductions of a plot line, but not anything that was like so huge that I or maybe it will be 8 episodes. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. So
yeah, I'm excited for when we're both on the same page and can really talk about She-Hulk. That's been my favorite part of all of this, is that first week you're like, I was ready to talk about She-Hulk, but I didn't have Disney Plus in the house. And just how we've been, sort of dancing around this one has been really fun for me in just the weirdest way. I don't know. All right. I don't know if I have anything else to share from this week. Anything that you want to talk about before we send this one off? Or
no, we're waiting for Disney Plus Day next weekend and just going through some of the motions. Then it's also the other big thing this weekend is we didn't even talk about it. It's a 3-day weekend. It's fucking Labor Day.
Yeah, it's Labor Day. Yeah.
Right. So... And like one of the big things that's really throwing me off this week, like really throwing me off, is I had no idea. Tuesday I was in a meeting at work and they were just like, yeah, we'll have to get to this next week. And somebody was like, well, remember that, we won't be here till Tuesday next week. And somebody else was just like, all right, Labor Day. And I was like, what? And I like jumped onto my like online, like calendar app for work and saw like, yeah, don't come into work Monday. No work Monday. So like, I had no clue that a 3-day weekend was coming up. And so like since Tuesday, it's been all of this stuff about like, what do we want to do for the holiday? I don't know. We didn't make any plans. Should we call anybody? Like, so it's been a lot of pre-planning for next week.
That's sort of why the during came of it. We could have tried to do another Labor Day special, but that might be my favorite dumb thing we've done on this show is like, oh, the show's finally on Labor Day. And it's like, it's always on Labor Day. Labor Day's a Monday, you friggin' idiot, Devin. But it's good times. I guess that's the last thing, right? Disney Plus Day is coming. Obviously, that's going to be in the conclusion of this whole experiment, us talking about the things that are said there. But a little bit of a pre-tease for that. Mighty Ducks Game Changers is coming September 28th.
Yeah.
Right? We talked about wanting to know when that's coming, and then they went and released the information before Disney Plus Day, which seems so weird to me. Like, I get
Yeah,
it.
I
If you
don't
guys
know.
want to synergize your announcements and stuff and try to make an event out of Disney Plus Day, I'm all for it, right? It's like it's
I
cynical,
can't
it's
judge.
gross, but like,
Right, but I can't judge the importance of an announcement like this until I hear what they chose to announce instead of Disney on Disney Plus Day,
yes,
right?
that's true.
Because if there's some huge thing that dominates the whole weekend, then clearly they're trying to get game changers out there before it gets swallowed up by the beast.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if there ain't much for them to release, then it's a whole other different conversation, right?
Right. I mean, the two big things that I was expecting from Disney Plus Day have had big releases. Andor got a trailer that like premiered during college football,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
then Game Changers just getting that announcement like across all the social media platforms. It just seems strange.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see what else they got in store this weekend.
Yeah.
But
That'll be an
at the
exciting
very
time.
least, we got Pinocchio and Thor. So
Yep, Pinocchio, Thor, and a 4-episode test of She-Hulk. Those are other things to look forward to in the conclusion of the Before, During, After trilogy. And I'll get to share my results of my whole study. So until then, if you're interested in participating in that study, you can find me on Twitter at Devin D. Decker, and I can tell you more about it because they are still looking for participants.
And if you want to hit me up so that you can talk about what you're excited for Disney Plus Day, you can find me at Siege versus the World.
Yeah, also hit up Siege if you were one of the people who saw Spider-Man No Way Home, the more fun stuff edition, but maybe not in theaters this weekend. Because neither one of us know what's happening with this thing.
Yeah.
And we'd like to hear from somebody who went and saw it, right? It made like at least 1.75 million on its first day, so
Yeah, and then depending on what did or didn't happen with National Cinema Day, and then we'll find out on Sunday.
Yeah, so
we'll see we'll talk more about it.
we'll
Probably
talk
next
more
week.
about that next week. All right. Until next time, to be concluded. Will?
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Stephen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.